UA book review. The book your church doesn't want you to read. Yeah, what's going on, party people in the place to be? I go by the name of the BK Pod, just transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Hope everyone's having a good Friday, good end of the work week. Hope you accomplish whatever you need to accomplish this week, and you get the chance to hang out and relax a little, with the Saints. Of course, speaking of the Saints, we gotta say what's up to the party people in the chat. We got Tyler Lott in the house. We got the incomparable, the indelible, king of all moderators, Nate 2D2 in the building. What's going on, sir? And of course, we got DFC in the building as well. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not yet already, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend that's him again. And please share this link to this live broadcast. I do not have a machine supporting me. I don't have, a team, a street team. I definitely got my peoples, right? But I need you guys to be my digital street team. It's really important that you guys partner with me and share the content. That's the only way this is going to get out throughout the interwebs. If you guys just take time out and put the link in your perspective, places in the internet. So it would be greatly appreciated. It would also be greatly appreciated that if you could spend a little digital change for your boy via PayPal, which is pinned in the top of the chat. Or if you'd like to be a monthly supporter of BK, you can become a patron. We get an assortment of goodies to enhance your personal Bible study. Right? We got Prime Minister in the house. What's going on? Good to see everyone tonight. So every once in a while, I like to do Joel is in the building. What's going on? What's known as the UA book review. And what that is there's certain books that have become staples within certain communities that critique Christianity. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, a lot of their points come from certain books. The first time they might hear certain talking points might be on someone's video, right? But where are they getting the information from? So what I've been doing, I've been looking at some of the books that are some of the originators of these ideas. And one of these books is entitled The Book Your Church Doesn't Want You to Read. Now, if you live in the more urban centers, like a New York, Chicago, a Detroit, Atlanta, if you ever been to a Black-owned bookstore, you've definitely seen this book in the 90s. Open air book vendors, in more urban settings that lean towards the Black Power books. You will see this book probably right next to the biography of Malcolm X, right, and right next to the Illuminati 666 book, the one with the white cover with the pyramid. You know what I mean? So, I grew up seeing these books, and it wasn't really until I started doing my YouTube channel and really, diving deep in apologetics that I started realizing that these books that's always been around me have been the inspiration to a lot of the fallacious arguments towards Christianity. So I thought it'd be great to put on public record some of these books and just look at it, a couple of things and really just challenge the claims that are being made in these books, right? So of course, the book is very before there was clickbait, I guess there was title bait, I guess, right? The book your church doesn't want you to read. Ooh, right? It's gripping. It's like, oh my gosh, it's because we all like to know things that we shouldn't know, right? There's something innate in us that we like secrets and special knowledge that not, this is not privy to everyone, just for the selected few, right? So the title kind of, wets that whistle. It scratches that itch, right? So let's look at this a little bit. Right, you can find this on Amazon. The little blurb they have here. It's past time to expose the truth about religion, myths, frauds, fantasies, and fiction, from end times to virgin birth to sun worship. Now into its third printing, bestseller, this popular anthology tells it all. The textbook of Freethought, edited by Tim C. Leedom. So yeah, it's an anthology. It takes bits and pieces of other books and compiles them into this one volume, right? So, yep, let's just said that. So here's what you'll find in the book, in the beginning of the book. The book you are holding in your hands is delivered to you with the hope that some fires will be ignited in your mind. The editor and authors who have spent years of study, research, and investigation share in a general point of view. The view that religious beliefs held by many people in the United States and other countries are totally unfounded. The book has incorporated a hard look at beliefs, evidence, stories, churches, and acts of omission and commission. And this is about the author. Tim C. Leedom was educated at the University of Kansas and completed his studies at the University of Hawaii. Was the recipient of several fellowships in journalism and political science. He served as an aide to both the governor, lieutenant governor of Hawaii, and was administrative aide to the Hawaii state legislature in the 1960s and 70s. And he has been involved in religious research for the past decade. So, he's actually a very accomplished human being, has definitely, played his part in the upper echelons of, politics in Hawaii, Doesn't say anything here about him being a theologian or has a degree in history, but it does say he's completed his studies at the University of Hawaii. So we don't know if he has an MD, we don't know. He has an education, right? Probably had a better education than I did. I only have a high school education and some college credits, so there's that, right? But so let's look into this. So the book here says, because of religion, more human beings have been murdered, tortured, maimed, denigrated, discriminated against, humiliated, hated, and scorned than for any other reason in the totality of the history of man. And I'm sure you've heard people say this in Facebook groups, maybe even during lunchtime at your job, that, religion is the cause for most wars, right? So here's a book entitled Atrocities, the 100 Deadliest Episodes in Human History by Matthew White and Steven Pinker does the forward. So in this book, it says, a final breakdown, depending on how one evaluates White's work, is therefore as follows. 11 out of 100, or 11%, of the worst atrocities in history can be ascribed to, quote, religious conflict, and 13 out of 100, or 13%, of the worst atrocities in history can be ascribed to religious conflict or, quote, human sacrifice. Although these percentages are higher than Philip and Axelrod's more comprehensive findings, 6.9%, none supports the claim that religion has been and remains the cause of most wars. So this book is actually critiquing another book about the same topic of who committed the most atrocities, most wars. And this individual is saying that Axelrod and Phillips, their numbers are a little off. But even with their numbers being off, none supports the claim that religion has been and remains the cause of most wars. Indeed, hegemonial war, a category that White defines as similar countries fighting, quote, over who's number one, and, quote, failed state, conflicts involving the collapse of a central government and the division of lands among warlords that results from civil war that follows, individually account for more of the worst atrocities on his list than religious conflict. Right? So again, this idea that religion is the cause for most wars is actually unfounded, based on data. Based on looking at all the events that happened throughout world history, that is not true. Right? Only 13% of all the wars have anything to do with any kind of religion. So the majority of most wars have nothing to do with religion, whether it's Christianity, Islam, or what have you. So it's just not true, just based on the data. The book goes on elsewhere and says this: what we should do, I suggest, is to give up the idea of ultimate sources of knowledge and admit that all knowledge is human, that it is mixed with our errors and prejudices, our dreams and our hopes. That all we can do is grope for truth, even though it is beyond our reach. We may admit that our groping is often inspired, but we must be on our guard against the belief, however deeply felt, that our inspiration carries any authority, divine or otherwise. What's the problem with this statement? Right? What's the problem with this statement? He's saying there is no ultimate source of knowledge and that our inspiration doesn't carry any authority, divine or otherwise. Which means the statement that the idea of ultimate sources of knowledge and admit that all knowledge is human also don't carry any authority. It's a self-refuting statement. Right? It's problematic. It's like, we can't trust anything. Well, then that would mean also the statement of you can't trust anything. Right? But he goes on and says, if we thus admit there is no authority beyond the reach of criticism to be found within the whole province of our knowledge, however far it may have penetrated into the unknown, then we can retain without danger the idea that truth is beyond human authority, and we must retain it. For without this idea, there could be no objective standards of inquiry, no criticism of our conjectures, no groping for the unknown, no quest for knowledge. And this is coming from the part of the book entitled, Is There Ultimate Source of Knowledge by Karl R. Popper. Popper seems to be a little confused because at one point he says we should give up the idea of ultimate sources of knowledge and admit that all knowledge is human and full of error, and which would mean that his statement about ultimate sources of knowledge is also filled with errors. But then in the same paper, he says, but then we can retain without danger the idea that truth is beyond human authority, and we must retain it. So which one is it? We should give up the idea of ultimate sources of knowledge, or we should retain the truth? Like, which one? Right? So, little strange. And, the Bible is all about looking for authenticity and looking for the truth, right? And investigation, research. Right? We see that in our Bible. In Acts 17, verse 11, the people here were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica, since they received the word with eagerness and examined the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. They enjoyed what they heard and resonated with them, but it didn't stop there. It's like, you know what? Let's backtrack. Let's take some time. Let's crack open the scrolls and let's see if this lines up with what we are hearing right now. Right? They actually thought critically of the message that they did receive. All right? The Bible shows us an example that that's what we need to do. We need to examine not only the scriptures, but ourselves as well. Right? So this idea of, Christians not thinking critically is not true. In fact, it's unbiblical. Right? So elsewhere in the book, it says here, for researchers, actually, before I do that, so what's up with the people in the chat? We good. All right. Let's continue. For researchers into Oriental history revealed the remarkable fact that stories of incarnate gods answering to and resembling the miraculous character of Jesus Christ have been prevalent in most, if not all, the principal religious heathen nations of antiquity. We've all heard this, right? That Christianity is just a composite sketch of various older belief systems. right? So that idea, that concept, those memes that circulate from the internet come from people reading this book. And the accounts and narration of some of these deific incarnations bear such a striking resemblance to that of the Christian Savior, not only in their general features, but in some cases in the most minute details, from the legend of the Immaculate Conception to that of the crucifixion and subsequent ascension into heaven, that one might almost mistaken one for the other. Now, this is coming from a book that a lot of us have heard from called The World's 16 Crucified Saviors by Kersey Graves, right? So the interesting thing about that particular book, if you go to the circular web, right, this is an atheist website. And this is what they say about this book. The World's 16 Crucified Saviors, or Christianity Before Christ, is unreliable. But no comprehensive critique exists. Most scholars immediately recognize many of his findings as unsupported and dismiss Graves as useless. These are the people that don't believe in God, who are actually against Christianity. And they're saying, yeah, this book is trash. Not the Christian apologists, but the brights, the atheists, the secular community, right? The free thinkers. They're like, yeah, don't play with this. This is trash. Internet Infidels Discussion Board, in partnership with the secular web, says this. Attention. The scholarship of Kersey Graves has been questioned by numerous theists and non-theists alike. The inclusion of The World's 16 Crucified Saviors in the secular web's historical library does not constitute endorsement by Internet Infidels, Inc. This document was included for historical purposes. Readers should be extremely cautious in trusting anything in this book. This is not the Christian saying this. This is not even theists saying this. Right? The secularists, the brights, the atheists, the free thinkers are like, yeah, we just got this book for posterity's sake, and feel free to read it. Just don't believe anything in it. Right? So don't take my word for it. The atheist said, chill. This is garbage. Basura. Right? So, and we know it's trash because when you look at some of the lists of some of these different deities and just understand, a quick summary of their stories, you quickly see that, yeah, it doesn't really, there's no way to mistake these guys for Christ. For example, you got Adonis. He dies when he is gored by a bull on a hunting trip. Attis, in a moment of madness, commits suicide by emasculating himself. Don't remember saying that in the Gospel of John, right? With Baal, the text is unclear, but it appears Baal is slain in personal battle with Mut, the Canaanite god of death. Bacchus is the Roman equivalent of Dionysus, whose body is almost completely devoured by the Titans, who leave only his heart. Didn't see that in the book of Matthew. Balder in Norse myths is invincible to all known objects except for mistletoe. One of the gods' pastimes is throwing objects at Balder, who cannot be harmed. Loki crafts a magical spear from this plant and tricks the god Hodor into throwing it at Balder, killing him. Yeah, have anyone read that in the Bible? I don't think so. Then you have Bedru, supposedly a Japanese figure. Either Graves had a bad source or he simply invented the name, as no figure with this name exists in Far Eastern literature. It may be that he meant to say Bedao, who is a Japanese figure who have equated with the Buddha. Regardless, there is no record of the crucifixion of this individual, if he even existed in any of the literature. You got Devatat. This is uncertain, but appears to be the name of the Buddha in some places in the Far East. The literature states that Buddha died at 80 of a natural illness, though some say he was poisoned. Either way, he never died on a cross, and Buddhism has no need of a personal savior anyway. And we already talked about Dionysus. None of these are not even closely resembles the gospel of Jesus Christ. Hercules dies when he's burned alive at a funeral pyre. Hermes never dies in the Greek myths. So that definitely eliminates him. And Krishna is mortally wounded when a hunter accidentally shoots him in the heel with an arrow. I don't remember Paul saying anything like that in his epistles. Right? So again, people make these claims, but when you look at the actual stories of these different deities, clearly they have no correlation with Jesus. So then another part of the anthology is The Secret Gospel by Martin Smith. Recently, a secret gospel has come to light, which bears interestingly on the anointing ritual discussed. It was discovered by Professor Martin Smith when reading some old manuscripts in the ancient monastery of Masaba in Judean wilderness. In his book, The Secret Gospel, 1974, he records how he recognized the transcript of the hitherto unknown letter from the 2nd century church father Clement of Alexandria. Further references also make it seem that Jesus was understood to have indulged in possible homosexual practices concerned with a particular form of baptism. That's a scathing accusation. If someone was to pick up this book and read that, that makes you feel like, oh yeah, this is why that's why the church don't want me to read this book, because in this book there has these special secret teachings about Jesus, right? Well, we're going to look at this book entitled The Gospel Hoax, Martin Smith's Invention of a Secret Mark by Stephen C. Carlson. This is what he says. Secret mark is not what it appears to be. All three components of secret mark, the pseudo-Markian fragments of a secret gospel, the letter ascribed to Clement of Alexandria, and the physical manuscript itself, are 20th century imitations. The manuscript was written in what may appear to be handwriting of the 18th century, but the hesitation and shakiness of its strokes and retouching of its letters, coupled with 20th century letter forms, indicate that the handwriting is actually a drawn imitation of an 18th century style. It's a Fugazi, people. It's a fake Rolex from Canal Street in Manhattan. It's the electroplated fake rope chain that turns your neck green. That's what this is. Right? Trash. It's been found to be most dubious. Theodore II is an impersonation, mimicking the style and vocabulary of Clement of Alexandria, but contradicting him with a simile that evokes modern salt-making technology. Secret mark is also an imitation with Markian parallels, deviating only at its climax, in language that resonates with mid-20th century expressions of sexuality. On three independent grounds and at three different levels, secret mark is a deliberate but untimely, imperfect imitation. It's fake. Fake. Trash. Basura. Right? It's no bueno. Then you have another part of this anthology, takes a portion of a book known as The Christ by John E. Ramsbury. Now, here, it says here, enough of the writings of the author's name in the foregoing list remains to form a library. Yet in this mass of Jewish and pagan literature, aside from two forged passages in the works of a Jewish author and two disputed passages of the works of Roman writers, there is to be found no mention of Jesus Christ. This list that we see here is supposedly, if Jesus existed, then his contemporaries here listed would have mentioned him in some way, shape, form. But because they are all silent about Jesus, it's because Jesus actually didn't exist. Right? This is an argument that we don't hear a lot, but I've seen a few times. And it's interesting how the few that actually do mention Jesus, like Pliny the Younger, they're saying, well, those are forged. Well, that's convenient, right? But let's look at some of these guys on this list and see whether or not they would have been writing about Christ. Right? You got Martial. This was a writer of poetry and satire. How would Jesus find a place here? Right? He's not doing a biography of Jewish people. He's a writer of satire. You got Arian. This guy lived in the second century and wrote works concerned with Alexander the Great. That's 300 years before Jesus. Quite a stretch for a mention. Like, there's no way that they could be connected if he's talking about Alexander the Great. Petronius. This was a writer of a novel called the Satyrion. Bartleby adds, among the surviving fragments, the most complete and valuable section is the Scena Tremolokinus, right? Presenting a humorous episode of vulgar display of the part of a man whose great wealth is newly acquired. Yeah, that doesn't sound like Jesus at all. You know, you got Dion Parsius. This guy was an orator, a specialist in speaking skills. Do books on public speaking today go off topic and mention Jesus? You know, the answer to that is a resounding no. You got Paterculus, authored an amateurish history of Rome. Paterculus was a retired army officer of Tiberius. He published in 30 AD, just when Jesus was getting started in his ministry. Jesus never set foot in Rome, so it's hard to see where he would fit in Paterculus' work. You got Apian, a Roman historian of the 2nd century who wrote a history of Roman conquest from the founding of Rome to Trajan. Only about half his books have survived fully intact. Again, Jesus didn't lead any Roman armies, so where would he fit here? You got Theon of Smyrna, a mathematician and astronomer who wrote a, quote, handbook of philosophy students to show how prime numbers, geometrical numbers such as squares, progressions, music, and astronomy are interrelated. No relation to anything to do with Jesus. In Perseus, we already have a few lines from this fellow who was a satirist who wrote 6 plays that we know of. Like the previous satirists, there is no reason for Jesus to be mentioned. Right? Because of what they wrote in their specialties, there's no overlap between, you know, here's the prime numbers. Oh, and by the way, have you seen that Jewish guy named Jesus? Man, like that's you're not going to see that. You're not going to see that at all. Quintilian. This fellow was a writer on oratory and rhetoric. Again, where is there room for mentioning Jesus and what was essentially a how-to manual of public speaking? Licanius, Seneca's nephew. All we have by him is one poem and some books recording the civil war between Pompey and Caesar. Where would Jesus have been worked into it? Epictetus. Bartleby reports that he wrote nothing. All his teachings was sat down by a disciple. But all his stuff is self-help and advice material. No reason to mention Jesus. Silius Italius, a poet who wrote a big poem about the Second Punic War. This was far from Jesus' time. And Statius, a poet who wrote the Tabiad about the 7 against Thebes, the Acleid, I'm butchering these Greek names, so I'm so sorry, a life of Achilles, and a collection of poems called the Salve. I see no reason to mention Jesus. So this big list of authors that were kind of contemporaries of Jesus, well, they never wrote anything that would have them have to mention Jesus. You know, if you're talking about, you know, public speaking, you know, or poetry or satire, that doesn't lend itself to the biography of a Jewish comforter from Nazareth. So these claims are unfounded as well. You know, and there's more, but, you know, I'm going to get to the, in closing, in almost all cases, Rendsburg's writers are either the sort who would not mention Jesus anyway, being writers of either fiction, poetry, or mundane and practical matters like oratory or agriculture, or historians of writers of another time or place. The few left over, like Plutarch or Tacitus, either did mention Jesus or else would be too bigoted to make the special diversion unless, as with Tacitus, they had some corollary reason to look into the movement. Tacitus was trying to show Nero's cruelty. Right? So yeah, you know, and of course there's way more stuff going on in this book that I've actually debunked in different videos, right? But I just wanted to, do a specific video about this book. And again, a lot of us are familiar with some of the claims that this anthology makes. I just thought it'd be great for you to see where these critiques from Christianity arrive from this special book that the church doesn't want you to read. And unfortunately, a lot of us are not well read and might be taken by this kind of information. But that's why you have people like myself and other apologists who are here to take the time out to look at these claims to see if there's they hold any weight. And most times they do not. In fact, pretty much all the time they do not. So if you ever hear anyone make any of these points from this anthology, please feel free to share this video to confront those claims. Me and other apologists, we provide content so to help you in your personal ministry. We're all partners. We all do our part in the body of Christ. We and other YouTubers, we create content so that we can help and enhance your personal ministry. We're here to serve you guys, and if there's anything that you would like for me to cover, is there a particular claim or a book or a teaching that you might have a hard time defending? Please feel free to put that in the chat, and we'll see if me or some others will get to it. Because again, we are here to equip the saints. That's our job. So and I hope that we've been a help thus far. So and thank you, Ms. Turner. Definitely appreciate that. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of our book review. I hope that you found that edifying and slightly entertaining. And with that, this is BK signing off. Peace.